And I went, "Yeah, okay. Are you okay?" And he said, "No." He said, "There's a room full of cops next door, here to lock you up." And I went, "Mate, are you f***ing me?"
I thought I was about to be told that he had been in a serious car accident or he'd been seriously injured. I had no concept that they were going to say that he was in custody.
Was there any moment where you had doubts going, what's he done? Oh my God. Ben and Amy Smith, welcome to I Catch Killers. I appreciate you guys coming on. It must be difficult given the subject matter that we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah, definitely.
That it does.
Yeah,
it does.
Because what we're talking about is that back in December 2016, your life was turned upside down when you were charged with 12 counts of sexual assault from matters relating back 20 years ago.
Yep, you're right on that one, mate.
Yeah, it's not the type of thing that, it would be easy to talk about, I would imagine.
No, it takes its time. That's for sure. We've been dealing with this for 6 years now. So.
Yeah, and so when we're dealing with it, Amy, you're Ben's wife. How long were you married at the time or how long had you been together?
Oh goodness, 2016. I can't remember when we got married. 2009.
You'll get yourself into trouble.
I will. I mean, we've been together for 18 years, so we'd been together for a long time when all of that happened.
Yeah. So when you get charges of this nature, like that does turn your life upside down. Like it's it's not an assault where you think you're justified. It's a sexual assault. So you as Ben's wife, when you first found out about it, what was your thoughts?
I think the worst thing when I found out was, I mean, there's quite a backstory, as in Ben was busy on that day and racing around, but I received a phone call from a police officer at Surrey Hills Police Station to say that Ben was in custody and did I want to speak to him. And I think one of the worst parts of it for me was I knew he was in a rush to get to a meeting. Yeah. And, of course, getting a phone call from a police officer on the 20th of December I thought I was about to be told that he had been in a serious car accident or he'd been seriously injured. I had no concept that they were going to say that he was in custody, and they asked me if I wanted to speak to him, which I thought was a really dumb question.
Yeah, we're going to go into it in detail in the podcast, but I could imagine that's not the type of phone call that you would expect. And Ben, you were a law enforcement officer. You're in the New South Wales Police for 10 years, and then with the Crime Commission. That's not where you expected to find yourself.
I never thought I would have been in that position ever.
Yeah. So the fact that you guys are prepared to come on and talk about this, what's motivating you to talk about it? Because I could just imagine with a situation like this, and I should clarify up front that you're acquitted of those charges, all 12 charges, and it's something that you possibly think, just I want to get on with my life, but you guys are prepared to talk about it. What's your motive there?
As you're probably aware, we're still at this point, fighting certain things throughout that. Yeah. We'll no doubt talk about that more.
Yeah.
For me, it's just about keeping people accountable. We always think that when someone is charged with something, that the people who are conducting investigations are doing the right thing. Yeah. And for me, and in my case, I didn't do anything wrong.
Yep.
And despite the evidence showing that, they proceeded with it anyway.
Yeah, and when you get an allegation like that, if mud's thrown, that it sticks. Even if there's an acquittal, that there's still something that hangs around, isn't it?
Yeah, it's everything. It's the from emotional, mental, financial. There's so many factors to it. Yeah, it impacts so many people involved with your personal life, your family. Throw in the industry that we've both worked in. you're involved with a they call it, the police family, and the minute the
sorry, I laugh. The police family, it gets fractured fairly often, doesn't it?
Yeah, and the minute you hear those words, where they're you're under arrest.
Yeah.
It all changed. It
changes. And also, there's meant to be, we've always maintained that, there's a presumption of innocence. But is that just a saying that we say, but we don't really live by it, the presumption of innocence?
Yeah, I think that it's a term that's thrown out for the judicial system. That, as you would be aware that, you've got to go out and prove your innocence.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be that way.
And really, when we talk about the legal system, it's the onus is on the prosecuting authorities to prove the offence. But the presumption of innocence, when those charges are laid on you, it feels like you've got to prove your innocence rather than them prove your guilt. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, I would absolutely say that.
Yeah.
Because, you got to think that if we're at that point where, I'm walking in with these horrible allegations to me, if I don't have something there to show that this didn't occur, then all they've got is this horrible story.
Amy, and it's great having you here because I'm very mindful of the fact that this didn't impact on one life. It impacted on your life, your personal life, your children, your family. Talk us through that.
It's hard to put to words how it impacts you from a daily basis. I would say in the last however many years it is now, I think it's just over 6 since Ben was arrested, I would say we have spoken about this every single day. I would say there would not be a day that does not go by where we haven't spoken about some sort of aspects of this. We've got 3 boys. We have an older boy he's now 20. He's always been aware of it. We had to make him aware of it because of the age that he was.
Yeah.
Our younger boys have only just become aware of it. So we let them know as media started to be around this situation. And yes, we did obviously want that.
Yep.
And back to your question to Ben before about why do we want to bring this forward? Because we never, ever shied away from the allegations. So within, I would say it was 7 days of Ben being arrested, under legal advice, we had it on social media. Because we knew obviously that it was absolutely false and we were never going to have that kind of get out the way that it would, especially living in an area where we live. I think that was a humongous factor for that as well. But how does it affect us? It's just been ongoing. We have great days, but I would say dealing with what we're trying to get through now, especially with some of the complaint and things like that.
These are complaints that have been submitted following your Ben's acquittal and following up on that. We're going to cover that later. I can only look, and I know the first time that we met, we were talking about it, and I said the pressure I felt when I was charged, and when the charges I was charged with were so minuscule compared to what Ben was charged with, and I know the pressure that you're talking about, it got to me, and I was well placed to stand up to the pressure. I know the system. The charges against me were something I wasn't ashamed of. A completely different scenario for you, and I can only hazard a guess how much pressure it must have put on both of you.
Absolutely, and now we face some additional stuff. So a question yesterday from our 10-year-old was, and it was to me, Mum, what would have happened if you didn't win your court case? He doesn't have a great understanding. Yeah. And I turned to Ben as if to go, shit, how do we answer this? And you got to be honest with them. And we said 14 years in jail, and his little, bless him, his little response was, oh, he would have missed all my footy. We're a footy family.
Yeah.
But now we face this, we're going to have to face a lot of these questions from these amazing kids of ours who are now just aware of this because they were so little when it happened.
And at least I think with the kids asking you questions, at least you can explain it. I think it carries some, it's worse where people are just looking at you and thinking, oh, well, maybe there's something there, that type of thing. That must be hard to deal with as well, I would imagine.
I think that can be hard to deal with, but we welcome questions. When people say things to us like, oh, I didn't, you don't have to tell me anything. I just want you to know that we're there for you. Mate, you can ask us anything because we're very open about it. Don't be embarrassed to ask us. We would prefer people ask us. And I guess that's also another reason as to why we want as much of this story out.
Well, it gives you an opportunity to put your version across. But before we get into the charges, I just want to get a sense of you guys, the life that you were living there, because the I Catch Killers podcast, we delve into the world of crime, and it's not black and white, is it? It's so dimensional. There's so many different things and the impact it has on you. So for all intents and purposes, you guys were going through living life, the white picket fence, normal life, happy in marriage, careers, and then it was all turned upside down. How did you guys get together?
Through a mutual friend. It was,
This might get you into trouble here, Ben.
Can we not tell the full story?
No, we won't tell the full story.
Come on, I'm going to probe. I'm going to ask these questions.
No, we met through a mutual friend.
Yeah.
Went round to their place and then we decided later on to catch up and at the time she had a little boy.
Yep.
At the time, he was just turned 2.
Yep.
And and we hit it off and
love at first sight.
I don't know.
Oh, sorry, you said yes. She said no. This is awkward.
No, it's not awkward. I sort of, when I first met Ben, I sort of thought, oh God, I'm 20. I think I was 24 or 25 with a 2-year-old, and I thought, oh, he's quite good looking. I don't want to give him a big head. And I thought, I'm going to get rid of this one because I think I'll get hurt here. Like, I think I'll like him a bit too much and it might not work out. And anyway, the rest is kind of history.
Well, I've got to say, and when we caught up before the podcast, I was, and full credit to you guys. Like I see couples, and I can see you got each other's back, and that's so important. So something's going right with the relationship. And then 2 kids followed for that. So 3 boys.
3 boys.
Okay, that's a handful in itself.
It is. House of boys.
Yeah, I can imagine. You shouldn't be whinging. It should be Amy. Amy whinging. What about you, Ben? Like you grew up on the coast or up the north coast of New South Wales, was that? And then you're a bit of a rugby league. I won't say star. I won't embarrass you, but you were looking at a career in rugby league. Yeah,
so I grew up in the mid-north coast.
Yep.
Actually grew up in Barraville.
Oh, Barraville, I know it well, and I think our listeners know it well.
Yeah, so I grew up in Barraville and played rugby league for Nambucca Heads. Mm-hmm. And early on in the piece, I got a little bit of interest, and we'd come from a family that wasn't overly wealthy.
Yep.
And my old man said to me, you train hard, stay away from the bad stuff, and I'll do my best to get you to Sydney. And 16 years old, off I went.
Yep. So you came down to Sydney and you were billeted and looked after by the club. You signed the contract with Manly Warringah, was it?
Yeah, I was at the Seagulls. I was there for 3 years.
Yeah.
And ended up over at the Tigers.
Right.
Whilst I was over there, broke my leg.
Yep.
And that made things rather difficult. It was a really, really bad break.
Yeah.
And with that, a lot of rehabilitation. So it was a good 16 months before I was, doing too much. So during that time, you have to reevaluate and think about what you're going to do. And
second option.
Yeah. And for me, I was really young, and there's times in my life where I go, I was quite lucky that an injury happened like that, because I could have stayed on that path to try to
not quite
got there, or I may have been very fortunate and got all the way.
Yeah,
but it made me reevaluate it, and that's when
it's an interesting situation, isn't it? A kid, you got your dreams and all that, and all the bright lights are there. It's almost in reach, but there's still only a small percentage that actually make it.
Yeah, and one of those things these days. You see a lot of them, getting opportunities or getting big contracts or even just a contract or an opportunity.
Yeah.
And for them at that point in time, it's all they want to do. That's their mindset is that's what I'm going to do.
And I suppose that's the mindset they've got to have to get to that level anyway.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's, and I just think that, it's certain things in your life that happen that make you reevaluate, reassess, and how you deal with the ups and downs. And, that particular moment in time made me pick up the pen and paper and put my application in, and that's how I ended up in the Cops.
In the police. So a broken down footballer with a busted leg?
Yeah. I was lucky. I got to go back and play a little bit of decent football after that, but that was where the
so the clubs were with Manly and Balmain, and then you applied for the police, New South Wales Police.
Yep.
What steered you towards policing?
When I finished school, there was a friend of mine. We spoke about either joining the Fireys or the Cops.
Yeah.
And that's just where it the coin flip ended, and I put my application in and joined the police.
Yeah.
I was at the time because after I broke my leg, I was up the mid-north coast, and that's
you were living back up the mid-north coast.
Yeah. And the application went in, and that's
how old were you when you joined the police?
Joined 21.
Okay.
Yeah, come out of the academy. I just turned 22.
Yeah. And when you guys met, was Ben a cop when you met?
Yes.
Was that good or bad?
I used to get lifts home from being out in Manly in the back of the paddy wagon.
That's because you've been bad.
No, it was just an easy option.
You wouldn't be the first one or last one that's got the police taxi, I would suggest. So being in a relationship with a police officer, was it? I don't often get to sit and speak to a wife of a police officer. What's it like?
I don't recall a huge amount. Like it didn't. I don't feel like it impacted me at all when he was just with New South Wales. Yep. When he was over with the Australian Crime Commission, that was quite different. I had to get very used to the fact that I couldn't know where he was. I did, so that and his work was way more demanding. So he could be on his way. I might call him and say, "Oh, what time do you think you'll be home?" And he would say, "I'll be home at, maybe at this time we're sort of still a bit busy." And then he'll call in 2 hours and go, "I'm kind of heading in the wrong direction." And then he'll call again, and I'd get a phone call at 10 o'clock at night, and he'd be, "I'm in Albury," and I'm like, "Oh, that's great. How am I going to go to work tomorrow?" So there were definitely some challenges when he was there. I think it was really fine. It was really easy when you were just in New South Wales because he worked so locally, so it was easy.
Yeah, that's the difference when it broadens where you go, isn't it? Like I found that in homicide, you get a call and you could be anywhere in the state and be there for a couple of weeks, or interstate, you just didn't know where it was going to take you. But what part of policing did you work in, Ben?
Started obviously general duties. Yeah. I was there for a while, and as not all, but a lot of junior cops get into the riot squad. So I ended up in the OSG for a while there.
Okay.
And then they started with those rapid response teams based out of Surrey Hills. So I went over there for a little bit. That was just the riot squads.
Yeah.
That was just everything was on secondment when I was.
Did you enjoy that type of policing?
Yeah, it was fine. I've GDs I found a little bit challenging. Those night shifts can get the better of you.
Yeah.
But it's work.
I often look at GD's police and the ones that stick at their whole career. I full credit to them. There's other areas of policing, but I think GD's is a real sharp end in that they're the ones that respond for first up, and you get a good GD's officer and on a shift that makes a world of difference, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, it does. It was something that I spent a fair chunk of my time in the cops.
Yeah.
Doing. I spent a little bit of time in crime teams and so forth, but it all stemmed from general duties.
Did you enjoy the training for the riot squads?
Yes and no. Some of it was good. Some was wasn't overly interested in, but I did it.
When they teach you how to get on and off a bus.
Oh, yeah. That's enjoyable. Isn't it?
Amy, you're laughing at us, and it doesn't sound that complicated, but if you've got right shields and right gear, there's a certain order that you've got to get on and off the bus.
Well, that is weird. I'm just laughing because actually you were in the riot squad when we first met, and I remember that was my favourite uniform. You looked the best in that one. But anyway.
Amy, let's keep it professional. Okay. You got into surveillance?
Yeah. So, an opportunity presented itself to head over to the ACC.
Yep.
And ended up there. It was an interest of mine when I was in the crime team.
Yeah.
And one of the old team leaders at Manly had come from the Staties. And so he offered his time with our crime team to give us a bit of an education in relation to surveillance, and it was always an area that I found really, really interesting.
Yeah. So you left the New South Wales Police, you put in your resignation to then join the Crime Commission.
Yeah. So I went over there on secondment first, and then I got offered a full-time gig over there.
And surveillance, without giving away methodology, because there's a lot of tricks you guys have, but that's basically putting physical surveillance on. You might have a target and you follow that target and record what they're doing and where they're going, that type of thing.
In a simple way, that's pretty much what you do.
Did you ever get caught?
Well, mate, sometimes you wouldn't know, would you?
Yeah.
But, I hope not.
Because I know when I've been involved in investigations where we're following people and they're very surveillance aware, and they'll be driving around the block a couple of times and stopping and looking and changing cars.
Yeah, it's that happens quite regularly.
Yeah.
But the funny ones are, when you've got people working and you're tucked away somewhere else, and you're there at a bus stop, and you got the local kids yelling at one of your team members across the street, going, "Hey, there's the cops," and you go, "Mate, just jump back in the car, buddy."
There are some areas, I don't care how good you are, you walk in there and they'll spot you as a cop a mile away. It's usually the kids throwing their heads up. But you enjoyed that type of work. You found it rewarding?
No, loved it. I really, really enjoyed it. It was nice to be back in a team environment.
Yep.
I know that you have your teams when you're in the cops, but you know what it's like if you're working in good teams like that with guys who know what they're doing. The jobs can be fun. And
there's a bit of adrenaline that runs with it too, isn't it? The thrill of the chase.
It's, the best way to explain it is it's it's like the duck in the water.
Yeah.
Even though everything looks normal, everything on the outskirts is going a million miles an hour.
It's just the variety of different jobs that you can get in law enforcement. So what age were you at this stage, at the Crime Commission? You guys were married by this point in time?
Yeah. It was 2010. 2010, I went over there in October, I think it was.
Okay.
30?
Yeah, thereabouts.
And you spent a couple of years there?
Yeah, spent a few years there.
All right. So the sense I get is you're enjoying your career. You're happy at home, and life's going pretty good for both of you. Would that be the status of your life at that point in time?
100%.
Yeah, absolutely.
Besides Ben disappearing to Albury every now and then.
Beside that, no, everything totally normal.
Okay.
Totally happy.
Now, we're going to talk about the allegations, and I know it's a hard subject, but I just want to break it down so people understand. And I think now people have got a sense of where you were at that stage in your life when this occurred. Firstly, and the person that made the complaint, we'll refer to her as the accuser. Did you know her?
Yes.
Right. And how did you know? Or
she was a friend's, we'll call her a relative.
Okay, a friend's relative. And had you had a relationship with her?
In the sense?
A sexual relationship. No. Right, okay. No. So you, for all intents and purposes, so people can understand the nature of this relationship, a relative of a friend, basically.
Yes.
And that was going back 20 years ago, because the allegations relate to 20 years ago?
Yes.
How long before? It was 2016 when the complaint was put in?
Yes.
had you spoken, how long before, at that point in time, since you'd spoken to her or seen her?
2001.
Right. That was the last time you saw her?
Yeah.
Okay. Was there, what about speaking to her?
They would be there about the same time.
Right. Okay. A phone call? You got a phone call about a month before the allegations?
Yes.
Yeah. Tell us about that. What happened there?
Yeah, I was at work, received a phone call. It was obviously took me by complete surprise.
It was this person?
Yep, it was this person. And the conversation was quite odd. And then randomly out of the blue, it was like, why did you do those things to me? And it was like, mate, I was trying to be as polite as I humanly possibly could be. And I said, listen, if it's a case that you're wanting to have a chat, get a hold of my friend.
Yeah.
And we will organise a catch up at some stage, because there is some history there that obviously would make that a little bit more clear.
Okay, and I think, and this is in my conversations with you, and so the listeners trying to get helping the listeners try to get a sense of it. When she was about 16, she had spoken to your friend and said you had sex with her, or a sexual relationship with her.
Slept with.
Okay.
18.
18.
She was 18, and you spoke to your friend about it and didn't go anywhere from there.
No, mate, let's go and sort it. This is complete and utter rubbish.
And you not challenged the friend, but said to the friend, let's go speak to her.
Yep.
And it wasn't taken up. And
no.
Okay. So we've got that at 18, did you say, Amy? Yes. And then you get this phone call out of the blue, and you said it was a sort of strange conversation. How did it start off?
It was pretty much, hey, how you going? It was like, I can't really remember the phone call that well, but
yeah.
It was like,
why?
Yeah, it was like, this is really weird.
I think one of the strangest part, I've heard the phone call, obviously.
Because the phone call was played in court.
Yes. Yeah. But I think one of the strangest things was her phoning you and just saying her name, like you would know who it was, just a first name. Like if I rang you, Gary, in a few weeks and went, oh, hey, Gary, it's Amy. Yeah. You would probably go,
Amy? Yeah.
Amy, and have a think about it. So I think that was 14 years later than
from when you knew the person, basically.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So her being 18.
You get this phone call out of the blue, make small talk like that, and then who was recording the call?
The police, the investigating police. Okay,
and that was presented in evidence at the trial.
Yes.
Okay, the transcript and the audio of the whole call.
Yep.
What was what did she say? Why did you do these things to me?
Yeah, that was pretty much it in a nutshell. It was nothing specific. It was really like, and hence why I dealt with it the way that I dealt with it.
And what did you? How did you deal with it again? What did you?
Well, I just pretty much turned around and said, listen, I have no dramas meeting up.
Yep.
But organise it through my friend and make sure he's present.
Okay. All right. So that would have come as a surprise and a shock to you. When did you find out about it, Amy? When did you find out about the call?
Ben told me it was either that night when he'd come home. He was really busy at work. I remember that. But so I don't know if you rang me, but I think you definitely told me about it the day it happened.
Yeah. So what did you think?
Nothing. I just went, oh, that's weird. Exactly as the point of those phone calls is to catch people off guard. It didn't even catch me off guard in the fact that I just thought, oh, that's odd. I didn't give it a second thought.
Right. And you told Amy about it first opportunity I got. And
I'd already knew about what had happened back in 2002.
And that's when we're talking when she said to your friend, her relative, that you slept with her.
Yes. Yeah. So I was aware of that.
Okay.
Always have been. I don't know.
But that had just been forgotten about for all those years.
Yeah, and me and the friend had been friends from that point.
Oh, yeah, he's been in our home. He's like
okay, so that's interesting. So the 2002, there wasn't any conflict between you and your friend. You stayed friends.
No,
yes. It was very interesting evidence in court, to say the least, because, yeah.
Okay, well, we get into the court situation. We'll break it down. Okay, so you've got this call. The next thing, in regards to these allegations, you got a call. You're at home, and you got a call to come to work.
No, I was at work. It was the day before we're doing Arvos, I think.
Yeah.
I know I was doing Arvos. I got a phone call from my team leader going, "Hey, I've just had a strange phone call from our national manager, and he wants to see you first thing tomorrow morning."
Right.
And I went, "Mate, we're on Arvos. I've got stuff on in the morning." And he just went, "Well, mate, why don't you just give him a call? You might be able to sort it out over the phone."
Did you have any inclination what it was in relation?
None
to?
at all. But it's not, it's not the type of person that would be wanting to call me just to have a chat.
Yeah. Okay.
It's so, obviously, I was a little interested with what was going on, obviously. So I called him and I went, what's going on? And he's just gone, "Oh, I need to see you." And I said, "I've got stuff on in the morning." He said, "Oh, when can you get here?" So I told him that I could get there around 11 o'clock-ish or 11:30. And I was, as Ames will attest to, I hate being late to things. 15 minutes is still late for me, 15 minutes early.
It's a good trait for a cop.
Yeah, and so I'm heading over there, hadn't had breakfast, I was starving, and I just remember shooting up, walking to his office, and he was pacing, and
this is your supervisor?
This is the national manager.
Okay. Yep.
And he was, his state manager, you're right. He was white as a ghost. And I went, I won't use any names. I went, "Is everything all right?" Actually, I'll go back to the phone call.
Yeah.
I probably skipped a bit here. As we ended the phone call, I just went, is everything okay? He said, "Don't lose any sleep on it." Okay. And that was the end of the phone call. And
so that was the day before you attended the office for the meeting? That was the end of that phone call?
That was the end of that phone call. I've then gone in the office pacing. I went, "Are you okay?" And he said, "No." He said, "There's a room full of cops next door here to lock you up." And I went, "Mate, are you fucking shitting me?"
Mm.
And he said, "I would never joke about something like this." He said, "It's in relation to a historical matter." He said, "That's all I know." So we walked into the room. There's two blokes in suits, one of which I knew. One inspector in uniform, or acting inspector.
Yeah.
And I walked in, introduced myself, walked up to the far window where the bloke that I knew was staring out, looking over the city. And he put his hand out and went, "Oh, this is my name." And I went, "Mate, are you serious?" Well, we know each other.
Like how, when you say know each other, work with each other, know each other?
Well, where I worked in New South Wales, our borders, we were on border. So there was some cross jobs that were done. That's, and that's how that sort of panned out. Yeah. So we knew each other like we weren't mates.
Yeah.
We just knew each other from neighbouring local area commands.
Okay.
That's all.
So you're confronted with that. I would imagine your head would be spinning at this stage.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I didn't know what was going on.
And someone, I'm imagining how that would play out, someone would have to tell you what the allegations were, if they've arrested you, what the allegations are. And
yeah, that was all that played out at that particular point in time.
Yeah.
When the name was told to me who it was.
Yep.
It was sort of like, fucking hell, what's going on? And yeah, from there it was, mate, you're under arrest. And I just, from that point, I just didn't know what to do.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? you see it happen all the time at work when you're on that side of the fence arresting people, but when you become the person that's the allegations are made against, it's a completely different situation to have to deal with. Did you reach out to speak to a solicitor or anything at that point in time?
Well, at that point, I obviously got taken to Surrey Hills.
Yep.
It was at that point I got shown the seat in the dock. I wasn't very happy about that at that particular point in time. And then it was door shut. And it got real.
When you were put in the dock at the SPC, had you worked at the SPC?
Not. That wasn't my local area where I worked, but I'd been in and around. I've taken people there, as we all had.
Yeah, I think when you said SPC, I think most people who've worked in Sydney have spent time at the SPC taking prisoners there or working around the SPC.
Yeah.
So it's a place that you're familiar with.
Correct,
you would have known the stairs. You would have known coming in through the dock and everything else.
Yeah, it was all pretty familiar, apart from the fact that I was on the other side of the seat.
Yeah. Tell us how you felt on the other side of the seat.
It's hard to put into words. It's one of the hardest things that I've ever had to go through. Change it. As we've said a few times now, everything changed. Everything changed. It was, in particular, when they sat me in that dock and they closed that door. You don't realise how small that little area is, but not having the ability to open the door when you want to open it.
Yeah.
And it was one thing that I remember from that time was, when I got back home, how unbelievable it was just to open a car door. And I was only in there for a short period of time. And you just go, mate, you don't realise freedom.
I understand what you're saying there, Ben, because if I'm trying to dissuade people from going down the life of crime, I've gone, what you've got to understand is when you're under arrest, you're in custody, you don't have an option to do what you want to do. You're put in that dock and that dock door's shut. You're not going to get fed, allowed to go to the toilet or do anything until someone lets you. That's confronting, isn't it?
Yeah, and I don't envy anybody who ends up in there any longer than that.
Yeah.
It's just horrible. It's a horrible, horrible thing to be put in that situation.
Find yourself there. So the charges, and I'll break down the charges, and it's they're serious charges. No other way of describing it, is it? It's serious charges. So we've got you. You've been called into work. You've been arrested. You've taken to Surrey Hills Police Station. It's a custody station where you would be charged. And the charges, and I'll just explain what the charges are so people know, and then we'll give an opportunity to talk through it. So you get a fact sheet when you're charged. So, and what a fact sheet is people, and this is for the listeners that mightn't be aware or haven't been charged, it's outlining the details of the offences. So each specific allegation becomes one offence. So when we say 12 counts of indecent assault or sexual assault, each allegation becomes a specific offence, and then that's a location, a time and date. That's the type of information that you have on the charge sheet. I thank you for it. You've given me a copy of the charge sheets, and just breaking the charges down. There's 6 charges relating to allegations of aggravated indecent assault of a victim under the age of 16. Those offences, according to the fact sheet, allegedly occurred between 1995 and 1997, when the accuser was between the ages of 10 and 12, and you were between the ages of 15 and 17. That's 6 of the charges. There's also 6 charges relating to allegations of a number of offences, including sexual intercourse without consent. assault with act of indecency, and aggravated sexual assault inflicting actual bodily harm. Those offences were alleged to have occurred between 1997 and 2001, when the accuser was 12 to 17, and the accused, we'll refer to you as the accused, was 17 to 22. How did you feel when you saw those charges, when you saw that fact sheet?
The answer to your question, I didn't see the fact sheet.
Yep.
I kept it from him.
Oh, but
I had it.
Right. Okay. So,
but I never got a fact sheet, even whilst I was in custody.
Okay. Let's break the custody thing down so people understand. So, you get arrested. You're cautioned. You don't have to say anything unless you wish to do so. But whatever you say may later be used in evidence. So that's a caution.
Yeah.
I would imagine as a police officer, with allegations like that, you don't say anything straight up.
Correct.
You then get taken to the police station, Surrey Hills Police Station, which is the charge room is downstairs, and you get led down there. You're in custody. Were you handcuffed?
No.
You're taken down. You're placed in the dock.
Yep.
And when you say when we talk about being placed in the dock, it's basically a bench with it's perspex there. You're locked up in a cell for all intents and purposes, where everyone's looking at you.
Yep. Talk
us through that.
It's horrible. It's probably the.
I think that's an understatement.
But we've been around stations for a long time, and it was. I just remember sitting on this bench. It was freezing cold.
Yeah,
and and in come those horrible blankets. That
the prisoner blankets.
Yeah, you feel like when you put it on yourself, you're getting. Bitten by mozzies.
I feel like they're made out of steel wool.
Yeah, and that's probably the best way to explain it. So, and then they come in and as I said, I hadn't eaten. So I asked for something to eat, and they brought me a shepherd's pie that had been put in the microwave for, I reckon, 25 minutes to defrost it. It was so hot. It was burnt. It was horrible.
Did the people in the station know who you were? Was that...
I would have... you'd have to think that they did.
Yeah.
I was obviously in a dock on my own.
Yeah.
But everything in the first part seemed to happen really quickly. I felt like I was on the phone to Ames pretty quick.
And they let me call. They actually let me call quite a bit and speak to him.
So what time were you arrested?
No, I was in the morning. It was like it would have been around between 11 and 12 in the morning.
Okay. And when did you find out?
1 p.m. I think, from memory.
So, and then from there, I need some legal advice.
Yep.
I knew that I was going to be offered an opportunity to be interviewed. The legal advice was don't say anything.
Who'd you get the legal advice from? They just give you a phone book, and I made a phone call. Yeah.
Yeah, and from there, I started. They've come down to offer me an opportunity to be interviewed, which I declined, and next thing, the officers in charge were all walking out, and not long after, I got handed a charge sheet with all the offences on it and the offence codes. And it had, penalty next, like how long you could potentially, spend in custody for each offence.
Yeah.
And as you could probably appreciate.
And what was it like? That'd be sort of 10, 15, 20 years?
Well, one of them was 25 plus.
Yeah.
Or 25 to life.
So it's not, it's certainly, and it's about as serious as you can get.
But the thing, I hadn't received any. I didn't understand any. I don't know how these offences had even been put on this piece of paper.
Yeah,
I had no understanding as to how those offences were on a piece of paper with my name on it.
Did they explain to you the nature of the complaints? Did you, or did you just get told the charges? I'm talking the investigating police here. I'm certain there was some mention of historical offences. Yeah.
I didn't really, as you appreciate at that particular point in time, I was just overwhelmed with what was going on anyway. I was in my workplace. Then I end up in a dock.
The SPC.
At the SPC with they had a voice recorder out recording everything.
Yep.
And and it was, I couldn't even tell you to this day what was said when I was in that dock. It was obviously quite formal at that point. They left. I get handed this piece of paper with all these offences on it, and I'd been bail refused. It was at that point.
Did that come as a shock to you?
Mate, the paper that I got given, me being there, me being called in my own office for something that I hadn't done was a shock. To be bail refused was something that I had no concept as to what was going on, was beyond.
And that's the bail at that stage is the determination made by the police, the custody manager.
Yeah.
On the recommendation of the investigating police.
Yeah. So from that point, I got old mate to come to the window. I said, mate, what do you mean I've been bail refused? And he said, well, that's the decision. Your bail's been refused. And I've just gone, mate, I don't understand how this has happened. I said, surely there's someone who can look over this. And he's gone, oh, mate, I can send it up to a senior officer upstairs. He said, but it'll take some time. And I said, mate, clearly I've got plenty of it.
Reasonable comment to make.
So I suggest you send it upstairs. And, it wasn't long after that. It was it'd been declined by upstairs. And it was that point I got transferred from Surrey Hills cells to corrective services.
Right, to the corrective services cells at Surrey Hills.
Yep.
Okay, Amy, what were you doing?
They allowed me to speak to him quite a lot.
Via phone or
via phone?
Yep.
And then he obviously told me he was bail refused. I don't know much about the law, probably know a little bit more now than what I did back then. I got on the phone to my dad and my mum and notified them, and we contacted our family's solicitor. They didn't do criminal law, and they refer all their criminal cases to Danny Eade, who to this day is a part of our family now. And he gave some advice. I can't remember what that was. It was quite a long time ago now, but he gave some advice. Ben then notified me that he was bail refused and he would be in for the night at that point, and we would have to attend court the next morning. He didn't tell me that. I can't remember who would have told me that, but someone obviously did, because I turned up there that next day. And with a solicitor or with a barrister who Danny had organised, because he wasn't available with such short notice. But and we went, and that's what we did. I had to work that night. I actually couldn't not turn up to work.
Yeah,
I had to go to work. I was a complete wreck. I couldn't understand. I was supposed to do all the Christmas shopping that day, which I never did. I'd left it a bit late, but I'd never did it because then we were dealing with that. So I went to work. I did my thing at work. It was only for an hour and a half. I came home. My mum stayed with me and slept in my room with me because it was pretty awful. I took one of the dog's Valium and chased it with a bourbon and Coke, and I got some sleep.
To listeners, we don't encourage that.
We don't. It is the same as human Valium, but anyway. But and from there, I got up the next morning. Ben's current team leader, who also is a close personal friend of ours, he picked me up and we went over and we met with this barrister in a cafe across the road from Central Court and waited for his bail hearing. He appeared on the little TV screen, and they still were trying to refuse bail. And I assume that means until his matter made it to court, which would have been, a year and a half? Like, it was just ridiculous. The argument, I've still vague. I still remember some of the argument. It is quite a blur. But, our barrister who represented us on that day was basically, it's just unheard of to bail refuse someone on a historical matter like this.
Mm.
And anyway, it was, Yeah, it was awful.
I think that's a understatement. That first phone call, when you find out that not only has he been arrested, he's in custody, and the nature of the charges against him. And answer this honestly, did you, it's the worst nightmare you could have from finding out that these allegations against your partner. Was there any moment where you had doubts going, what's he done? Oh, my God.
No, I didn't know anything about what the charges were at that point. I wondered if one of their jobs in there, that's what went through my mind, one of the jobs in that the work that he was doing with the Crime Commission had gone pear-shaped. He'd somehow been something tied in with that or related. I didn't think that.
But when you did find out the nature of the charges, sexual assault, historical sexual assaults.
Oh, no, it was just like being told something in a different language. I was looking at it going, this is ridiculous. That's
not the Ben I know. Is that the...
100%. Yeah. 100%. I mean, I didn't need, to put it plainly, I didn't need proof that hadn't happened. We were able to provide it, but I didn't need proof. I mean, if you were to hand me that fact sheet right now and a highlighter, I would highlight probably 2/3 of it where he is not physically present at the location.
That's pretty telling, isn't it?
It's beyond telling. I mean, and that was in their brief, not by information that we could provide. That was their own brief, and that was their own timeline that was provided by the accuser. I like that word. It was. I mean, I couldn't look at that without him at that point and know that, because I can tell you where I was at certain times, but he was really easy to document with his football career and where he was living and everything like that.
So what you're seeing there, you're saying could be rebutted.
Yes, I read it. It was confronting to read. It was awful to read. I read it and I just, you know people. People. It didn't, so that I didn't waver on that, not once.
Ben, so we got you a video linked to the courts trying to get bail.
Yep.
It must have, what was going through your mind? I mean, being in custody is not good for anyone, but as a cop, being in custody is, particularly bad.
Yeah, I didn't get much sleep.
Yeah. Because really, if you're putting your, sorry, I interrupt, you're putting your faith in the court to make a decision. And if we've been cops long enough, we know courts don't always get it right and you can get caught up in the system. So you must have had it in your mind. You could be going out to Silverwater or Long Bay.
Yeah, well, that was, as I said, I only had the charge sheet, so I hadn't seen what had been put on paper, so I had no idea. All I had was these offences, which would be beyond comprehension. So I'm now getting transferred over to corrective services, and the first thing I said to the leading senior constable behind the charge desk was, "Buddy, they know who I am," and he went, "Yep." So I got transferred over there, got escorted.
As in, they know I'm a cop. Like you're not going to get put in with general population.
Yeah. So I get, taken through, processed. They go through all my stuff, document it, and then they escort me into one of the cells and the strip search.
Yeah.
And from there it was shut the door and I had no idea what was that, and that's when time stopped.
It's confronting going into custody, and you say the strip search, but for people that don't understand this world, that's basically whoever's standing round. You take all your clothes off and put you in all sorts of positions and search.
Yeah. That was everything.
Yeah. So your life has changed dramatically from 24 hours before, hasn't it? You thought you'd be doing afternoon shift working as a law enforcement officer, and here you were being strip searched in corrective services custody.
My head was spinning at that point.
Did were you treated differently because you're a cop by the cops at the charge room or corrective services?
The cop that was behind the desk in the charge room, he was fine. Yeah. He was just doing his job. The investigators from when I first saw them
Yep.
It was all shake hands and introduce to when that dock door shut, chalk and cheese. I just felt at that point, I'd gone from just being, someone in that
person accused of something,
to being, mate, you're behind the door now, and it was.
Do you? And this is just your opinion. It's not. We can't speak for them, but to have bail, an application, and I think I'm explaining in layman's terms the way the bail is processed, that there's a custody manager that has to make a decision. They will take recommendations from the investigating police, and you've got to look at a whole range of things like, will the person abscond? Is the victim safe? That type of thing when you're considering bail. What basis did they think they had to bail refuse you?
I don't know.
I remember them saying in court that because he was a police officer, his ability to contact witnesses.
Well, that was what was said. That was what was said whilst I was on the video link.
Yeah.
Right.
That was one of their reasons as to why they thought I should be kept inside.
Because you're a police officer? Because
I'm a police officer, and I may have the ability or the nous to manipulate witnesses.
Right. It's a double-edged sword, isn't it? It's
Yeah, anyway.
Okay, so you're in custody, you've spent the night, gone to bail, local court, because bail, again, just explaining it in layman's terms, for bail, police can refuse it up until the first appearance of the local court. So you've gone to Central Local Court, I would imagine, via video link, and you've been granted bail.
Yep.
What were the conditions?
20K. For bail.
You had to put the cash up, surety?
Yep, a surety.
Thanks to my mum.
Okay, sorry, I'll just interrupt you, Ben. Sorry, Amy, I keep forgetting you. I'm worried about what Ben's going through, but it's intrinsically linked.
Mum had the kids, and I'm in court, and I'm on the phone to her, not in court, but out on the phone to her going, Mum, I need you to get 20 grand cash. And she's like, oh, okay, which wasn't a problem, but not everyone can just walk in and take 20, money needed to be moved around. Yep. It couldn't come from multiple accounts. Money hadn't cleared. She's got how old were the boys? 2016, 5 and 3-year-old in tow. It was, I can look back on it now and almost think it is comical, because she pulled up out the front of Central Court. I was a wreck. I knew we'd got the bail. It had been approved, and I know you'll get to that. But, she had my 2 little kids fast asleep in the back of a cab, so she wouldn't get out of the cab. She had $20,000 cash on her in her little leather backpack that she used to take everywhere. And, it was just, it was surreal.
Yeah,
and then to just cross the road holding $20,000 cash, going, what happens if I get hit by a car? What happens if someone has followed her? What happens if just stupid stuff that goes through your head? Highly unlikely. But then to walk in, and I had to tell her where your passport, where to hand his passport in.
Surrender your passport, 20,000 surety, and reporting daily. And not to contact anyone in relation to the matter, the usual things. Reporting daily. Where did you have to report? The police station?
Yep.
Was it a police station known to you, or were you new?
No, I think that was pretty quickly recommended whilst I was still in custody.
Yeah.
That wasn't to happen. So I ended up over a bridge, and
so you're not walking in and speaking to people. And again, say people, because we're talking like, it from the criminal side of it, but the police side, and just so people understand, like reporting. You go into a police station and you've got to actually report to the police station. So each day you had to drive to a police station and say, here I am, I haven't absconded, and fill out or sign a card or get your fingerprints taken, whatever.
Yeah, it was... it was mortifying.
And to reduce the impact that had on us, and especially due to Ben's lack of sleep at those, for both of us, but at that particular time, he used to go at 5 a.m. most of the time. So by the time he was back, the kids were probably not even up yet.
Get a get it out of the way.
And that was changed, thankfully, in court.
A little while.
Maybe 4 weeks?
Yeah,
maybe
probably.
a bit longer? Late Jan?
Tell us about when your mum, your poor old mum, has got the $20,000 cash in the untraceable notes in the backpack with her 2 kids, presented the cash at court, and you've signed all the agreements and you're released. What was the first thing you two said to each other, or can you describe that moment?
Mate, I put all my stuff on as I was had it all handed back to me.
Yep.
Turned my phone on, and not only was there relief that I'd had my shoes and my shoelaces back,
yeah.
But there was an instant, I'll call it fear of media.
Yeah, that's the first thing he said to me as he came out. I was waiting outside of those big doors, and ironically, he was brought out by a
person we knew.
What do you call the people that look after you in there?
Corrective services.
One of them was a friend of ours who was at our wedding, and he brought him out, and just the look on his face as he kind of helped Ben out, who looked like he'd been run over. And before we walked outside, he said, "Is there any media?" And I said, "There's no one outside. The car's out there, we go." And then we took you to McDonald's. You were hungry.
Starving.
McChicken.
Couldn't you have asked for something better than McDonald's,
mate,
your first meal out?
Needed something, mate.
We're laughing about it, but it's certainly not a laughing matter, is it? Like, this is what you've described is heavy stuff. And
mate, absolutely. It just it changed. Everything changed.
Changed you as a person, just at that moment.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I would imagine yourself, Amy, as well.
Yes, I think we have become people, though, who are able to often refer to, is it a silver lining? I wouldn't wish what we've gone through on our worst enemy, but because of certain events, other things I think have occurred in our life, and one of which, I mean, we've always had a really good relationship, but I think you could turn around right now and say that it would be indestructible as far as a couple could be from a married perspective and a family perspective.
No, I understand what you're saying. It certainly it could have fractured the relationship or brought you together.
It didn't. It did exactly the opposite. I think that, I don't know.
Look at you two. Besides the argument at the dry cleaners, but we'll talk about that later. Look, that might be a good time for us to take a break. But before I do, I just want to reiterate that Ben was acquitted of all those charges. Like, we've read out the details of the charges, but you were acquitted of the charges. So if people have just listened to this part, I don't want them walking away thinking that you were convicted of those charges. When we get back to hear part 2 of Ben and Amy's story, we'll talk about what happened following the arrest, the court case, thoughts about the investigation, and how the whole episode has changed Ben and Amy's view on life. I think that's a fair way to describe it. So we'll take a break now and we'll be back shortly.